So welcome all. Today we are seeing something about requirement engineering. Basically here we are trying to understand the how to get the requirement from the customers. What are the need of the customer for which they are trying to have our software or services. Okay. So let us see what are the topics we are going to cover. We will cover functional, non-functional requirements, software requirement document, specification and the process, how to this thing elicitation and analysis, how to get the requirement which is not coming out easily, how to validate the requirement, and how to manage the requirements which has come and which might be coming as a change request. Okay, so let us see overview of requirement engineering. So here requirement engineering is the process of establishing the services that the customer requires from a system and the constraints, means conditions, under which it operates and is developed. So here are two things that we are considering. One is what are the services or functionalities that the customer is expecting from the system, and what are the constraints, what are the conditions under which the system will have to work. So the requirements themselves are the description of the system services and constraints that are generated during the requirements engineering process. Okay, let us see requirement in a little detail. Here what I am saying is, so what I am not saying, according to the book of software engineering written by Ian Somerville. So till now we have seen all the things in according to Pressman. This thing we are seeing according to the book software engineering written by Ian Somerville. Okay, although both of the books are having the same thing, talking that requirement is something, and we are getting the requirements, how to find out the requirement discovery, I should say, right? So let us start with understanding of the requirement, that it may range from high level abstract statement to a detailed mathematical function specification. So it may be a high level abstract requirement that we want a service for, we want a system for this particular thing. Okay, later on we have an example, we will see that we want to have a system which offers these functionalities. Okay, later on actually we will have a detailed specification that this is a function which will take this input, this will be the output, and this is the process through which it will find out the process the input, right? So here you see these requirements will have some certain purpose, right? It may be the basis of bid for the contract. Whenever somebody needs some software, they will write down their abstract statement of services they need and make it available to all the bidders. These bidders will make their bid that yes, I can work on this particular project and we will be able to deliver it within this, and they come up with certain kind of feasible solution for this particular system. Okay, so that may lead to a contract itself. So both of these will be considered as the requirement. Here say here we are talking about if a company wishes to let contract for a large software development, then it will give you a certain abstract specification. Okay, solutions are not predefined, right? So in that case this requirement will be given on certain portal, and from where different other companies or independent people can bid, right, for the contract, offering perhaps different ways of meeting the client organization needs means feasible solution, and accordingly a contract can be made between these two. Okay, so these all the things what these companies have offered and what the abstract specification was given by this company, all these documents will be considered as requirement documents. Okay, let me say some more things on detail, like what can be the type of requirement: user requirement and system requirement. User requirement will be a little abstract kind of thing, maybe in a natural language. You see, the statement said in natural language. Maybe you can have certain diagrams also to specify the services which you need in the system. Okay, you can also specify certain conditions, operational constraints. So basically this is something which is written by the customer, that high level kind of thing, this is what I want. Whatever he thinks, a little detail he can add. Later on, system requirement says that we want every specific detail. Okay, in the next slide we have an example. For now you see that it is a structured document setting out detailed description of the system functions, services and operational constraints. Whatever here, definitely it is talking about certain functions and constraints and services that they need. Here we have in detail everything that actually we want. Okay, so it also defines what should be implemented. So maybe part of a contract between client and contractor. Okay, client is the customer and the contractor is these people, software engineer, software engineering side. Okay, so let us see one example. See, one of the user requirement definition, it says for a hospital we want a system MSC PMS, the name of the system, which will generate monthly management reports showing the cost of drugs prescribed by each clinic during that month. Okay, so we have so many clinics working together, and here we want that a monthly report for each clinic. Okay, so after that we went through talking with maybe other people, maybe other people who can give us the requirements, maybe the system end users who will actually use, not the customer itself. And maybe the if there is somebody, some engineer on the client side, they can also help us. If there are certain other people, or even the software developer on our side also, they can also help us in finding out these requirements. Okay, so basically here we are specifying what actually we want. Here monthly generating a report means we want on the last working day of each month. We are specifying when do we want, right? On the last month of each working day, we want some kind of summary, a summary of drugs prescribed, their cost and the prescription, this kind of things. The system shall automatically generate the report something at this particular time. A report shall be created for each clinic, whatever, these all the requirements, right? So one thing you have to understand, that a user requirement was given, which was a little abstract. However, system requirement for the same feature, we are having a full description, right? Now the same thing, who are with whom we are interacting, who are responsible to give these kind of requirements. User requirements will be given by client managers, system end users, client engineer, contractor managers and system architects. However, the detailed requirement, the system requirement, can be got from system end users, client engineers, system architects and software developers. Having known these things, you have to understand that there are category of requirements which can be functional requirements and non-functional requirements. Sometimes one is something we call domain requirement, which is domain specific. We will see these three things in this video today. So in functional requirement, what is happening? You can understand functional requirement name itself says that it is a functional behavior. Functional behavior means it will take certain input, process it and give some output, right? So here it is a requirement, which means it will be a statements of services the system should provide. Which kind of service? How the system should react to a particular input. Okay, when a particular input is coming, how should it react, what should be done, and how the system should behave in a particular situation. Here in functional requirement, we may also state what the system should not do. Okay. Having known these things, let us talk about non-functional requirements, which are actually not dependent on the input. However, it is dependent on certain other things, like the conditions, the constraints on the services or functions. Okay, whatever the constraints are there, which make the system usable. Okay, these constraints, which can be like timing constraints, constraints on the development process, or certain kind of standards to be followed, often apply to the system as a whole rather than individual features or services. These constraints and conditions, here what we are saying is, mostly it is on the whole systems and rarely it is on individual features or services. Okay. Other than these two, they are domain requirements. These are also a kind of functional requirements only, but they are domain specific. Domain specific means some kind of software which is being used in particular domain. In education sector, it will have different behavior. In an industrial sector, it will have different behavior. Those features are same. Okay, so domain specific requirements will be there. So functional requirements, we are going a little detail in the functional requirement, where we are understanding that it describes functionality or system behavior. It also depends on the type of the software, expected users, and the type of system where the software is used. Functional user requirements may be high level statements of what the system should do in a particular situation on a particular input. Okay, functional system requirements should describe the system services in detail. Here we are talking about that whatever the functional behavior we want, that functional behavior should be clear enough to understand. Now let us see one example here. Functional requirements in our system, right? This example of hospital with different clinics. A user shall be able to search the appointments list for all clinics. Okay, one user should be able to search about the appointment lists on all the clinics. Now what is happening? So the system should generate each day for each clinic. Okay, these are the three different requirements actually. So the system should generate each day for each clinic a list of patients who are expected to attend appointments on that particular day. Each staff member using the system shall be uniquely identified by his or her 8-digit employee number. So these are requirements. Okay. Now here you can understand that this requirement is all, can you consider that these all the requirements are functional? Yes. Given on a particular click event or something, you want to search the appointment list. You on a click event or something, you want to generate this kind of list, or on a particular event that at particular time at 5:30 every day, you want to generate that kind of thing can be done. Every system, every person should have this kind of employee number, which he can use to which he can enter to use the system. Okay. Now, in these requirements, there can be some kind of imprecision. Imprecision means if the system, the problems that the requirements that we are giving, if the requirements are not precisely stated, in that case there will may be some problem. If you will say, suppose you want we have to search for the appointments also, so this can lead to different kind of understanding. Okay, the user who said that we need to search for the appointment, he was understanding that it will be search for the appointments in all clinics. However, the developer understood that we have to search in a particular, in any one of the clinic. Okay, user can choose in which clinic he has to search, right? So this is ambiguity. So this ambiguous requirements may be interpreted in different ways by the developers and users. So here what we are understanding is requirements should be precisely stated. Okay, if it is not precise, it is looking a little bit ambiguous, so those people who are responsible to gather the requirement, they should ask repeatedly to make the requirements precise and very clear. Okay, now when the requirements are complete and consistent, so in principle requirements should be both complete and consistent. When do you call it complete? They should include description of all the facilities required. Okay, apart from that, consistent means there should be no conflict or contradiction between the in the description of the system facilities. Between whom? Between the customer and the developers. Okay, they both should agree that yes, it is. They said that we want to search. If it this developer should confirm that, okay, are you going to search for just one single clinic, right? He will say no, not for single clinic, we want to search for all the clinics. Okay, then it is done, clear. Okay, so it should be complete and consistent. Now what happens here, we are saying that in practice it is impossible to produce a complete and consistent requirements document. Okay, sometimes we should accept that the requirements may be more understandable once we generate the prototype. Okay. Okay. Apart from this, let us talk about non-functional requirements. These are the requirements which are actually defined by the system properties and the conditions, constraints. Example, reliability, response time, storage requirements, constraints. Okay, constraints are I/O device capability, system representation, and many more. Okay, so these non-functional requirements are actually more critical than functional requirements. Functional requirement is saying that okay, you will give certain input and this will be the output that we want, right? However, these kind of non-functional requirement which is talking about response time, it should come as fast as possible, or within we will see, we have note down certain measures that according to this measure it should come on time, right? So whether these all sort of things are happening or not, whatever the requirements are there, accordingly we have to, if these requirements are not met, then it is not user friendly, right? Users will have problem in using it, and if it is not user friendly, in that case the system becomes useless. Okay, so these are a few things. Okay, the types of non-functional requirements. What are the types? We are actually here categorizing some of the things. Non-functional requirements are being categorized as product requirements, organizational requirements, and external requirements. Okay, so product requirements are something like usability requirement, efficiency, dependability, and security. Efficiency can also be considered as performance and space. Organizational requirements can be environmental, operational, and development. External is regulatory, ethic, and legislative. Legislative can be accounting and safety and security. So such kind of different non-functional requirements can be there. If at all these requirements are not met, the software may not be that usable, right? Let us see non-functional requirements, implementation issues. So non-functional requirements may affect the overall architecture of the system rather than the individual components. Okay. So for example, to ensure that the performance requirements are met, we may have to organize the system to minimize communications between components. Okay. So different such things we have to keep in mind. A single non-functional requirement such as a security requirement may generate a number of related functional requirements that define system services that are required. Okay. So these are the few things about non-functional requirements. You have already seen that we have classified it as product, organizational, external. Okay, let us see this. We have some example also. So requirements which specify that the delivered product must have a particular way, like speed, reliability, etc. Right? Organizational requirements actually which are a consequence of organizational policies and procedures, like process standards, implementation requirements, these kind of things. External requirements are such which are not internal. Okay, external requirements are which arise from the factors which are external to the system, which are not in our hand. Okay, and its development process, external to the system and its development process. Example, interoperability requirements, legislative requirements, and we have already seen some of other things, right? Having known this, this is an example related to our system, that product requirement can be, say, all clinics. Okay, it should be available to all the clinics during this particular time. Okay, this is the downtime within normal working hours shall not exceed 5 seconds. Organizational requirements can be authentication. External requirements can be whatever the shall implement patient privacy preservation. Okay. So see the goals and requirements. Here also we are talking inside the non-functional requirements only. The non-functional requirements may be very difficult to state precisely, and imprecise requirements may be very difficult to verify later. Imprecise requirements means you want it to be fast. Okay, how do you define fast? Later on, whatever developer will say it is fast, and you will say no, it is not fast, right? So there should be a particular measure to verify that. You will say that it should be this much fast, and it could be verified whether it is that much fast or not, right? So basically there should be a goal. For example, general intention of the user, such as ease of use, it should be easy to use. However, some other kind of requirements, non-functional requirements, can be specified which can be verifiable. So verifiable non-functional requirements should be stated. A statement using some measure that can be objectively tested, that yes, whether it has achieved that mark or not. So goals are helpful to developers as they convey the intention of the system users. Now see, the user wants the usability, right? So the system should be easy to use by this is by the medical staff, whatever they who are using, and should be organized in such a way that user errors are minimized, right? Other kind of these things. Here also you will see which can be tested. Say after this training, what is the training time? 4 hours of training will be enough, and after this training the available number of errors made by the experienced users shall not exceed 2 per hour. So these are testable, right? So one thing is understood that whatever we are specifying, they should have a kind of measure. Let me show you here. Here the speed can be measured in terms of screen refresh rate, or the event response time, or the processing of transaction. So size can be measured in the bytes or whatever specified. Ease of use is as we have seen training time, and this kind of reliability is mean time to failure or availability. Robustness means time to start after failure. Portability it can be measured in terms of number of target systems or percentage of target dependent statements, target dependent statements. Okay, so these are the ways you can measure the non-functional requirements. So whenever you are specifying a non-functional requirements or you are getting a non-functional requirement, try to get it in terms of measures which can be verifiable, verified. Okay. So after this non-functional requirements, we can see something about domain requirements. Domain requirement is the requirement which is domain specific, very simple. Okay. So the system's operational domain imposes requirements on the system. Okay. For example, a train control system, a control system specifically for the train, okay, has to take into account the braking characteristics in different weather condition. Okay, if at all it is raining condition, what should be the deceleration? If at all it is sunny or winter season, what should be the braking deceleration? So domain requirements be new functional requirements, constraints on existing requirements, or define a specific component, computations. If domain requirements are not specified, the system may be unworkable. So see the train example. Okay, it is a train protection system. Now here you have to decelerate the train whenever the requirement comes. So what will the deceleration? D control plus D gradient. At what speed it should be reduced speed. So suppose this is the speed, but it should be compensated according to the particular weather, right? So if somebody who is not a specialist in this particular domain, he may not be aware of these things. So in that case, it can be either specified by the domain experts, or in our team, in the development team, we should have somebody who is domain expert. Okay, then only these kind of things can be implemented. So what are the problems here? You can see in the domain requirements, they are understandability and implicitness. Understandability means requirements are expressed in the language of the application domain. As in the last slide, if you see, it was D gradients, compensated, these kind of thing. Now you are facing difficulty in understanding because you don't know these things, right? So either these people who are in the domain of train system, they could specify this in our language so that we could understand, or in our team we should have a specialist of this particular domain, right? So that the understandability problem is there. This is often not understood by the software engineers developing the system, right? Implicitness is what? Domain specialists, like those people who are working in the train domain, they understand the area and they understand it so well that they think that okay, everybody will understand. They do not think of making the domain requirements explicit. Okay, they should make everything clear, but some of the things they feel that yeah, it is understood. In different weather condition, it should have different behavior, it is understood. But software engineers actually will not take it like that. We want everything explicit. Okay. So after understanding these three types of requirements, let us see what are the points, key points we can take from here. Requirements for a software system set out what the system should do and define constraints on its operation and implementation. What are functional requirements? Functional requirements are statements of the services that the system must provide or are description of how some computation must be carried out, okay, depending on the input or an event. Non-functional requirements often constrain the system being developed and the development process being used. So it is the kind of condition that we want in our system. They often relate to the emergent properties of the system and therefore apply to the system as a whole. This was for non-functional requirement. And in domain requirement, what was that? It is domain specific. It is generally a functional requirement maybe, but it is domain specific. So this is all that we have seen today in requirement engineering. Later on we will see some more things, how to discover the requirements. Okay. For now, we will, thank you.